We start with the Russia-Ukraine war, and the Kremlin has expressed satisfaction with the progress of talks with the United States. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov said discussions have been constructive, leading to agreements on a temporary moratorium on energy strikes. On the other hand, Rustem Umerov appreciated productive talks with the states. Yesterday, the US reached separate agreements with Ukraine and Russia to pause attacks in the energy. Also, Moscow's defense ministry has accused Ukraine of attempting to attack civilian energy infrastructure in 3 different areas. This came despite what Russia claims was a US brokered agreement to suspend such attacks. The ministry says Ukraine targeted a gas storage facility as well as energy infrastructure in the Kursk and Bryansk regions of Russia. The Kremlin stated on the 25th of March that Russia and Ukraine had agreed to temporarily halt strikes on oil refineries, pipelines and nuclear power stations for 30 days. The Defense Ministry reported 2 drone strikes in the distribution station in Belgorod. And the strikes caused damage. The station is still operational. Meanwhile, conditions must see maritime security deal with the US can take effect. Moscow insists the previous deal did not address. Listen to what Rustem Umerov said about the talks with the US.
The meeting is a continuation of our meetings in Jeddah, a very productive, effective, and we're thankful to the leadership for their initiatives. We're thankful to the American President, President Trump, and for his wonderful team.
Well, joining us to discuss the latest developments in the Russia-Ukraine war is Keith Vaz, the chairman of the Integration Foundation, who is joining us from London. Keith, thank you very much for being here with us today. I first want to look at this deal that the US has agreed with both Russia and Ukraine separately, focusing on the Black Sea. Now, Russia say they are not ready to implement this deal until certain circumstances are met. What do you think, firstly, they could be, and how can the US deal with any peace talks if Russia aren't going to enact what they've agreed to?
Good afternoon, Josh. You're absolutely right. We are in almost a stalemate position. The Russians realize that the Trump administration desperately wants a deal because, of course, this was the promise that President Trump made when he became president, that he would solve the problem, the Ukraine-Russia war, within 24 hours of becoming president. It's now quite a few months. It's 3 months since he became president. It's still not solved. So the Russians, who are canny negotiators, Lavrov, who I had to deal with many, many years ago in the Foreign Office when I was a minister in the government of Tony Blair. Lavrov is a very clever operator. They sense the fact that they have the cards at the moment. America is desperate for a deal. The Ukrainians are desperate to please the Americans. So they've been offered an end to the bombings in the Black Sea, and now they want something else in return for that. So this is typically the way in which the Russians operate. And so they'll press this until sanctions are raised, which of course undermines the entire position that the European Union has taken, which is that we need more sanctions, not less. In fact, the British government a few weeks ago put up more people being sanctioned. So it's going in the opposite direction. And at the center of this is the way in which the Russians negotiate. They know that they're now in a position of strength. They know everyone is desperate for a deal, and therefore they're going to push as hard as they can. What's also interesting, Josh, is the fact that that great European initiative, when Prime Minister Starmer from the United Kingdom brought together all the European leaders, we've not heard much more from that. And I would imagine it's because the Americans are telling them privately, you better stop pushing while we're having our negotiations in Riyadh. So it seems the whole European initiative has come to an end. So we are, I think, at a bit of an impasse at the moment, and it's very worrying that this is reached this stage.
Yes, Keith, I want to look at that impasse, and we have heard from Donald Trump, as I mentioned at the start of the programme, that he says Russia may be dragging their feet over a peace deal with Ukraine. Do you think Trump and his delegation will need to change tact in order to achieve what they want, which is ultimately peace between Russia and Ukraine?
Well, I think we all want peace. The European Union, the United Kingdom, everyone wants peace. Nobody wants this war to continue. I think the Russians want peace as well. But peace has a price. And their price is, of course, to hang on to the land that they have accumulated during this war. For the European Union, their position has always been, and European Union plus Britain, EU plus Britain, has always been that he's got to vacate all the land. Now the Americans are now coming in with their own land grab, as we know. They're sending their vice president and the second lady, Mr. and Mrs. Vance, to Greenland for their own attempt to expand the borders of the United States. So you've got all these various stories unfolding at the same time, all these statements that have been made. I think America has weakened themselves in terms of negotiations by insisting they want peace virtually at any price and starting the negotiations without Ukraine. If you're discussing a country like Ukraine, this is not Yalta. This is not the end of the Second World War. Ukraine is saying we have to be at the table. Now they're not at the table, they're just on a different floor of the Ritz-Carlton in Riyadh. They're on the top floor and the negotiators are on the next floor down. So somewhere along the line, this is either going to break down or there's going to be a very messy deal in which you don't bomb the infrastructure, but you carry on bombing the Black Sea, you raise certain sanctions, you try to get everyone back to the same table. But of course, this is going to take some time. It is certainly not going to be in the timescale that Donald Trump originally envisaged, which was the day he became president. This has passed. That deadline has passed. All the cards are on the table. There's nothing to bargain with as far as the Russians are concerned. You will see that Sergei Lavrov and President Putin will be asking for more and more and more because they know how desperate the Americans are to have a peace deal.
Yes, well, Keith, I do want to look forward and to bring an end to this discussion. You mentioned there that the Russian delegation, the Russian leaders will continue to ask for more. At what point does that stop? And do you think that a peace deal is actually a realistic possibility?
Well, I don't know. It's human nature, isn't it? If you know what the other person, the other group is doing, and you know they're absolutely desperate, you just have to read Donald Trump's book, The Art of the Deal, which is you don't show your cards before the end. Unfortunately, he's shown all his cards in his desperation to get something as part of his legacy. But, you know, Trump has handled this. It's easy for me to say this. I'm not president of the United States, and neither are you, Josh, yet. The fact is, he should have started the negotiations and then revealed his hand. If you reveal your hand at the beginnings, the Russian are just going to go in and ask for more and more and more. We all want peace, but the trouble is, I see no immediate ending in sight until Ukraine is allowed into the talks and America relies on Europe. Europe is a big asset for America because they buy, or they have done in the past, Russian oil and gas. They're clients of Russia, clients of Gazprom, and they are strategically just next to Russia. So you've got to get the Europeans involved. If you extend this, I think there's a better chance of getting a peace deal than Russia doesn't feel that it's got all the cards in its hands.
Keith Vaz, as always, thank you very much for joining us. Of course, these developments will continue to come from the Russia-Ukraine conflict, and here on NewsX World, we'll be there to bring you all of those updates. But we do